Hello and welcome to JCL and You. I'm your host, Julia Stone, and today my guest is Cesar Fernandez.
Thanks for having me.
So Cesar, would you mind telling us a bit about your research?
Of course. I've been looking at the potential economic impacts of California's AB 32 and what would determine whether or not AB 32 is considered a success.
Wow, sounds like a fascinating field of study. Could you please explain for some of our listeners what exactly AB 32 is?
Absolutely.
Oh, Cesar, you're funny.
AB 32, also known as the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006, is a law that California has implemented to help mitigate climate change.
Great. So now, could you outline some of the goals of AB 32?
Yes. So, the goals are to set greenhouse gas emission limits that are equivalent to 1990 levels by 2020, to create a list of near-term solutions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Also, to report and verify statewide greenhouse gas emissions. And lastly, to adopt a plan and regulations for achieving the maximum technologically feasible and cost-effective reductions in greenhouse gas emissions from sources.
That's pretty interesting because those seem like some pretty lofty goals. How do you think we're going to go about and achieve those?
Well, we all know that a goal without a plan is just a wish. So we have three different paths. One approach assumes that California shifts to producing all of its energy from natural gas. The second approach assumes that 20% of California's energy will be provided from renewable sources. And the last approach assumes that 33% of the energy will come from renewable sources.
Great, thank you. So now that we have a better understanding of what exactly AB 32 is, can we get down to the economic side of it?
Absolutely. So obviously, when you think of California, you think about our beautiful real estate. This is one of the biggest driving factors for mitigating climate change from an economic standpoint. That is because California has $2.5 trillion worth of real estate assets that would be at risk from sea level rise and wildfires. AB 32 also has the potential to create 50,000 green-collar jobs.
Wow, so it sounds to me like we could really avoid some hefty losses, but are there any economic concerns associated with AB 32?
Well, the answer is yes. For instance, the higher the amount of renewable energy, the higher the cost is for that energy. So in 2008, the total statewide electricity expenditures for California were $36.8 billion. Would a plan that has California producing all of its energy from natural gas, that would have been $49.2 billion. If we received 20% of our energy from renewable sources, it would have been $50.6 billion. And if we would get 33% of our energy from renewable sources, it would have cost us $54.2 billion. This means that Californians will have to pay more for their electricity if they want it to come from renewable sources.
Interesting. So now, are those all of the costs?
No. So besides the cost of increasing price of energy, we're also going to need $115 billion worth of infrastructure if we want this to happen.
Wow, that's pretty expensive. Do we have any evidence that this is actually working?
Well, currently it is. Carbon intensity has declined an average of 1.9% per year over the past 4 years. And at the same time, California's GDP has grown 6.6%. So contrary to some of the nonsense that you hear out there, we can make AB 32 work.
That's great. So is this the only way that we have to judge the success of AB 32?
Well, even though economic factors are important, all the research points to success not being measured in dollars, but in whether or not bills like AB 32 get passed in other states.
And has this been done before?
It has. California has led on this issue before. California was the first state to have emission testing for cars. This led to the Federal Clean Air Act of 1990. So clearly we have instituted very large environmental programs in the past. And if efforts between the private sector and states continue, California can once again be a model for the rest of the United States on actions that affect climate change.
Well, there you have it, folks. This has been Julia Stone and Cesar Fernandez with JCL and You. Have a great night.